Hello and welcome to the freehand frame practice drawing video for the second portion of our practice page. Today we are going to be learning how to draw from a reference photo that is smaller than what we want our end result drawing to be. Now we are going to start together with the bird, and this is going to be a follow along video. So you are going to be doing these steps right along with me, but this is a really great example of how you can take one of the reference photos from the packet that you'll receive at the end of this unit, and you are going to be drawing from those reference photos, and they're typically smaller than what you want the end result to be for your final. So this is a really great practice to learn how to take something that's small and to draw it larger while still keeping the same proportions. Now, something that's different between these examples here, for our leaves, we had a box that we were drawing into, similar to our notional box from Bark Plate, and we drew into the exact same size box for the leaves. We started with something simple and then moved into something more complex, like the fish, and again, we had the same size notional box. Now, for this next practice, we have a notional box and then a larger notional box. So it helps us, because we have those same proportions in this box, to help us look at the space around the bird to make sure that we are following the same proportions. Now for our final practice today, we are going to work on this Parasailor, and we have no notional box. So we're going to be coming in and helping ourselves in different ways there. Now let's go ahead and begin. Grab a pencil, and a pencil that has an eraser or an additional eraser. Now, something that I find particularly helpful, and we did this on the leaves for our first practice, is to go through and give myself a small, simple border of the main basic shape. So let's do this together. And the beak is gonna actually touch on the edge. We wanna keep this nice and consistent going around the edges here. And we've got this box that we're drawing into, and thankfully the proportions are the same. So we know going from this space into this space that we can kind of count on those spaces being similar because this box is the same proportions. Now what we can do is we're going to go through and we're going to give ourselves just a guesstimate of like the halfway point for all four sides. So just a guess of where that halfway point is, and let's do that on this final notional box as well. Doesn't need to be exact, we're just going for our best guess here. Now let's go ahead and start. I like to start with smaller spaces. So let's start at this beak, and what we're going to draw now is this shape, and I want you to do this with me. Let's fill in this shape. Let's fill in just that one. And now we can see it starts just a little bit below halfway. It comes out at an angle, and we have the wing that's gonna end here. So we see that the wing comes in a little bit past halfway. So let's bring that a little bit past halfway. We're gonna lift that up to give us that first little section of the feather sticking out. And then we're following the angle. So something I find helpful is I'll like kind of give myself that angle with my finger so that then I can copy it better to make sure I'm following along. All right, now let's go ahead and do this next smallest space. Fill this one in with me again. We're gonna fill this shape in so that you can really pay attention to the shape we're drawing. This is the shape we're drawing right now. So we're gonna come in, and we are a little bit above halfway for that beak. We've got the angle coming up, and right about at this line is when the other side of the wing starts to lift up. And we've got the edge of the wing that starts right about here. So let's make the edge first. So we've got the edge of the wing that's just going past halfway, and then it drops down and comes up and drops down again. And then we're gonna get that angle. Now looking at these two shapes, I think that mine is too wide. So I am actually gonna double that line because I think I had good angles, but it was in the wrong location. And I'm gonna erase that first line. Now you do the same. Look at yours and see, does this shape that we created match that darker shape in the background that we're trying to copy. I think I might need to come in and round out that head a little bit more. Okay, there we go. Now, let's go into this top left corner, and we'll fill this one in. All right, now we are gonna drop that down, and let's go ahead and give ourselves where the tail stops. It comes past the halfway point, and then we've got a sort of like horizontal line, so it has like a change of angle here. And we're really paying attention to the shape of that background space. So we've got a straight line on the edge, an indent for the wing, and a small little mountain shape for the tail. Now let's fill in this bottom space. This is the one we're drawing next. Now we are going to just curve around to show the edge of that tail. We're looking at this back and forth to make sure that we are copying that shape the best that we can. All right, now let's go ahead, and as soon as you are ready, we are gonna go through and give ourselves that same kind of border, and I'm going to just keep it nice and small. I'm gonna just give myself not all of the feathers quite yet because I want to come back and do that more precisely. So I'm just giving myself the basic shape within this space. And it's gonna give me a chance to draw in the bird's head. So we are gonna just really pay attention and look at that image. We've got just the beak touching here. All right, now we've got the edge coming down for the wing, and we could give ourselves this first little pointer finger wing, but for the remaining feathers, I'm gonna come back through to do that with detail later on. So I'm just giving myself that double line. Now I'm just working on adding the edge of the body, and on the top edge, right by the tail, you can see that it's starting to come in front of that back wing. We're gonna add the tail, kind of curving around, paying attention to that shape, and then we've got that lifting up. Now, we've had a chance to see our proportions, we've had a chance to go through and correct after we got our first basic shapes blocked out. Now we can go in and erase that extra line. We added that line so that we could help ourselves to pay attention to the background shapes to help draw this to be more proportionally accurate. Once we've got that first outline shape placed and accurately drawn, then it becomes easier to go through and look at our animal to see what details we actually need to go through and add. Now we are going to add in the little top of the beak, that little wraparound that pigeons have. We're also going to come in and add just a little bit of shading here. So we're going to add just a little bit of like that shadow underneath, and then we're going to map out the back. So let's add in this kind of little like oval shape that's kind of wrapping back up. And then we've got the body that's like a fairly lifted horizontal line coming from the back edge of the tail. Now let's go through, and on this top wing here, we've got our first pointer feather, and then we've got one that's kind of like almost touching, and then another and another before it starts to like become just like a bumpy edge. And then we can make that curve and wrap it around. Now we're gonna come in and add this little detail, just kind of a swoopy shape with some lines kind of scalloped off the edge. And then we're gonna come in and draw the angle for these feathers all leading back to this line. All right, now let's go on this wing, and we're going to start with those feathers. So we've got our first pointer feather. We've got 1, 2, 3 before they start to just kind of become a scalloped edge or like a bumpy edge. Now let's add our details. We've got this one first little swoop of dark feathers, kind of even with our first, and we'll add in a second kind of scallopy swoop, and scallopy means just kind of bumpy on either side. And then we're going to come in with our pointer finger and draw that line back. And then all of these lines for the feathers are leading towards the front of that wing. So we're just adding these lines going back towards the front. All right, and now we've got our tail. Let's go ahead and just add kind of a roughed up scalloped edge on the outside of that. And we've got some lines leading up towards the body of the bird. And then we could add in our small eye. And then you can just go through and decrease some spaces that might feel too large. You can add to spaces that might feel too small, but now we're just going through and perfecting because you've got the majority of your proportions accurate. Now, our final practice, we are going to work on this parasailor, and we are starting without a notional box. There's no box for us to draw into. We don't have the proportions of that box to be able to rely on. So we are going to need a ruler for this, and you are going to start by giving yourself a triangle shape, and we're lining it up with the leg of our parasailor and connecting it to the edge of the sail itself. So let's give ourselves that angle, and then we're going to connect the other side of the sail back and connect to the other foot. Now what I'm going to do next is I'm going to take my ruler and I'm going to line up this angle, and I'm going to give myself that angle of the first side of the triangle, and then I'm going to line it up and I'm going to put my ruler between these edges, and I'm going to do my best to try to get that same angle to line up. So we're seeing that our ruler is parallel with the edge of the triangle here. So let's draw that up. All right, now what we're going to do next, we are going to give ourselves the separation between the top of the sail and our parasailing man. So let's connect the inside corners of this parasail and give ourselves that line. And now we are going to try to make this triangle match with the angle. So we are going to try to make that the same shape and proportion of triangle with the exact same angles. So we're just trying to make this triangle look like this triangle. Now what we're going to do is we're going to give ourselves a halfway point on this line, and our sailor's helmet starts right about here, and the feet will start right about here. Now let's give ourselves a halfway line on this side as well. We're going to do that on the example and on our final. All right, now let's do one last halfway on this side. Now we can see that we've got our helmet that starts right about here, and I'm just going to draw a circle to represent the face. So let's just draw this circle, and we're going to add a smaller circle to represent his hand, and we're going to add a little line for his shoulder. Then we've got a little bit of his edge of his elbow is going back towards that halfway point. Oh, but I realized I need my elbow to be up above the halfway point, and it should almost be touching. And I'm gonna pay attention to the angle, and sometimes I'll even give myself the ruler angle so that I can see if it's in the right location. And this is sort of like a stretched out triangle. So that means maybe my helmet and head need to be a little bit bigger. And then we'll have a little stretch of the shoulder that's between the hand and the helmet. Now we've got his elbow. This is the bottom of his forearm here. So we are going to come in and let's add the pack that's right here. And it's just past the halfway point. We've got his little pack, and we've got his thigh that's starting from there. Now we have just this little sliver of a lift up before we get to the edge of his knee. So let's draw the section of his knee and thigh that are connecting. So here's that bag, and here's the thigh. We want to draw where the knee curves, and then we're going to drop that down and have the foot coming off of this edge. Give you a minute to get caught up there. Now we can see that right beneath his helmet, he's got this strap that's holding in like the parasail part, and that's where his other leg is sticking out from. And we are going to focus on drawing that triangle shape that's just beneath his foot, this open space between the feet. Gonna add in the pant leg here and end that a little soon so that we have space for his ankle and his foot to be like resting on the line here. Now let's draw his torso coming back towards himself. Maybe a little bit bigger on the head. Okay, now we are gonna add in the arm, and it should be leading up towards the top of that triangle. And we're gonna add another small kind of pointed, rounded oval to be holding on to those strings. Now let's go ahead and add the line for the helmet. That's pretty distinct, and we're gonna just kind of narrow out the head to be more proportional to the body. We are gonna just go through and we can add some shading here to just kind of help show these spaces a little bit better. We've got dark shoes, so we're just kind of like showing some shading, especially like where the leg adjusts direction, because that shows that the leg is just catching the light right there. That's why it looks that way. All right, so there's our parasailor. Now we are going to start drawing in the actual sail, and we can see that it like comes in a little bit right through here and a little bit right through here. And that's how it starts, and then it kind of comes out towards the middle, but not quite, and then it wraps around. And then when you have extra lines, go through and just try to clean those up so it's not too sketchy. And we're gonna start with this bottom section that we see, and it starts skinny and then gets thicker on the right and then skinny again. We've got one more little light stripe, and this one's skinny all the way across, and then one more dark gray stripe before we then get to the scalloped edge. And we're just gonna add this like bumpy scalloped edge. And then we need to pay attention to how much space is above the scalloped edge. It's more in the center, and then it gets skinny on either side. And then we've got these lines going straight back. Now we've got the strings that are holding our parasailor on. And we have two locations where they're coming from, one for each hand. And then we can erase the triangle line. And there is our parasailor. Nice and proportional, even though we drew him from a small image, and even though we drew him without a notional box. So those are some tips that I find particularly helpful when I am drawing something that I want to be proportional and specific to match an image. It's also really helpful to make something look more realistic by adding in the details that you actually see, just how we did. So I hope this was helpful. Thank you so much for watching. I'll see you for the next one.